What's up everyone, Justin from Make Supply here, and today's video is a build-along tutorial for making a tri-fold wallet. The day has finally come, the most requested template set of all time, a tri-fold. This template set is a free PDF download. If you want to download this pattern for free to print out and make with us, just go to the link in the description below. It'll take you to my website and you can download it in letter size or A4 size paper. It is also available as an acrylic template set for purchase in my web store or my Etsy store, and also as a new format, which is a laser ready digital file, where if you have a laser cutter you can load it right up into your laser and cut your own templates or cut it directly out of leather. This template set comes with all the stitching holes you need if you wish to use them. So go ahead and download the template and print it out and come back and we will get to working on this trifold. All right, let's do inventory. So if you've never seen any of my videos before, I will point out the tools that we'll be using in this video. I try to use reasonably easy to come by things that anybody can get, but if you have the more advanced version, feel free to use them. And also there is a table of contents below in the video description, so you can skip around the video if you don't want to watch any of this. I am going to discuss the template printout after this, so for now I'm just going to take the template paper out of the way, but I did print it on 110-pound cardstock. I'll also discuss the leather after this part. So I'm going to be using a cork back ruler, number 2 X-Acto knife, CS Osborne scratch awl, some barge cement, wing divider for marking stitching lines, some thread nippers for cutting the thread. This is 0.8 millimeter tiger thread, white. What else do we have here? I will be using the Seiwa Diamond Stitching Chisels 6-prong and 2-prong. This is a generic mallet from Amazon. I will be using, I hope I can find more binder clips, but these are just 2 binder clips that I'm going to be using to hold glued pieces together. It's much beneficial to have more than 2. Dremel burnisher, or Dremel for with a sanding bit. I'm going to use this to sand, not to burnish. Regular piece of 240 grit sandpaper just for generic sanding purposes. A wood slicker for burnishing edges. I'll also be using some gum tragacanth. I don't have it right here, but I'll get it for that step. And this is a Montana Tools edge beveler, number 2. It's a little bit big for this project, but I actually like the way that it bevels the edges, so that's what I'm going to be using. And is there anything I'm missing? I don't think so, but again, I will list all of these tools in the blog post for this video. Okay, so let's look at the template printout. So let's discuss the PDF printout for this trifold wallet. Like I mentioned in the introduction, this is a free PDF download, so you can go to the link in the description below and print this out in letter size paper or A4 paper. Please, please, please make sure to print it at 100% scale. If you don't do that, it'll come out smaller than it's supposed to be and your wallet won't work. Okay, so first we'll look at the printout PDF, and then I'll discuss quickly the other versions of this template that are available. Your PDF will print out onto 3 pages. First page will have 2 halves of the outside shell, which I will discuss in a minute. The second page will have the interior piece, as well as the center panel. They'll be writing on this too. I'm not done formatting this yet. And then the third page will be all the card slot options. So there is a curved option or a straight option for all of the card slots for this design. You can mix and match if you want. I'm just going to be using the curves today. Okay, so let's go back to the first page just to explain this. This piece was too large. It's too large to print on one piece of paper. So I had to cut it in half, and then we're going to attach it together to make one piece. And as you can see here, it has all the stitching holes marked if you want to use them. All right, so when we put this together, it's going to look just like this. Just like a standard shell for a wallet. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to cut out all three of these pieces, just around the outsides. And then what you'll have will be this. You'll have the connector panel, piece A and piece B. So what you're going to do is you are going to then make sure you line up your holes on the bottom here. You're just going to line up the edge of the center to the edge of to the center line of the connector pad here. And you can glue that or tape it. I use the barge cement on the paper. Let's leave it here. So you're just going to put it like this and glue that down, and then take the other piece, line it up nice and straight, put it onto that connector pad, meet in the middle, and glue that down or tape it, and then you will have your completed outer panel. Okay? So that's what you have to do to make the outside piece there. And just to save some time, I've already cut out the other pieces that I'm going to be using. Running out of daylight here, so I want to make sure I get all this in. So here's the inside panel from this page. Just to cut around the outside. And then since I'm using curved slots, I cut the curved slots out, T-slot and the bottom slot. And then the center panel, which is mandatory, and then the curve option of the card slot for the center panel. And as you can see, this will all go together like this. Center panel onto the middle here, all the holes will line up if you want to use them. And then center panel card slot here. And then T-slots on the edge. You need to cut 2 T-slots out of your leather. There's a marking, there's some dotted lines that will guide you to where the T-slots go. And then card slots on the outside edge there. Just like that. Okay, so this will all make more sense as we get working. So now I will go grab the leather that we're using and we will discuss that. All right, but before we get started, I forgot to mention the other options for this template set. So as with all the template sets, I have an acrylic version. So this is a physical acrylic version that if you're interested in purchasing is available in our web shop. It comes with, or on our Etsy store, it comes with both card slot options and everything that you have in the PDF pack with all of the stitching holes marked. See that there? And there's a new format as well that I'm starting to roll out where I have a section on the website called, this is only available on the website, called laser ready files. Basically, I format these designs. So if you have a laser cutter or you want to take it to a die maker, you can use those files. They're specifically EPS files and SVG files that you can then laser cut your own acrylic templates or send it to a die maker, or you can just laser cut it straight onto leather. And it has certain formatting that I think works for most laser cutters, so that's also an option in our web store. Okay, so I started, but I actually have to go back and explain something before, so I'm going to start over on this part. The leather I'm going to be using is a Wicked and Craig natural vegetable tan leather, and this is 2 to 3 ounces, so it's pretty thin. With the trifold leather, you're going to have more problems if your leather is thicker. Obviously, it has to fold over itself 2 times, so that extra thickness become a problem once you have credit cards and cash and then in somebody's pocket. It becomes like a brick. So your best option is to use the thinnest leather that you have, and also if you have a somewhat flexible leather. This isn't very flexible, but as it gets used, it will become more flexible. So anything, you know, nice and thin, has a little bit of flex to it, will be the best option for this. You can still use it, you know, if you have a 3 to 4 ounce leather for like all the other projects that I use, you can do it. Just make sure to do your skiving and keep your edges nice and clean and thin, and you should be fine. There's not too many T-slot layers here, so you should be okay. As I mentioned before, all the holes are marked in here, so if you are going to be using the holes, make sure to mark them as you're tracing and cutting out here. I'm not going to use the holes here. I might use them later for some positioning, but I'm not using them for stitching. So I already traced this one, but I wanted to make sure to come back and explain this before I go. So again, if you're using the holes for stitching, make sure you mark all of your holes as you go along and then trace. Okay, so I'll get back to tracing here. Okay, and just to remember, you're going to need 2 T-slots of whatever design you choose, 2 bottom card slots, and then everything else is one piece. So 1 center panel card slot, 1 inside panel, and 1 outside panel. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just trace the rest of these out, and then cut them, and then we'll come back and look at it. I don't know how easy that is to see there, but I got all my card slots, 2 T-slots, 2 bottom card slots, the center card slot and the center panel. I cut out the outside panel and the inside panel already in the home stretch here. Okay, so I went ahead and cut all the pieces out. As you can see, we have everything lined up here. For now, I'm going to take the outside panel and just put it off to the side. We're not going to need that for a minute. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start with the center panel. For the sake of time, I'm not going to burnish the card slots. So at this point, if you are going to be burnishing your edges, you want to burnish all of the card slots, the top edge, as well as the top edge of the center panel card slot. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go straight into the build process. So what we're going to do now is start with the center panel, and by gluing the card slot onto the center panel and then stitching it down, and then going from center panel onto the body piece like that. Okay, so you can kind of move everything that you're not going to be using out of the way. Grab your glue. All right, I want to go ahead and put your card slots down, line up all the edges nice and straight. The more accurate you are early in the project, the easier it'll be as you start adding more layers and all that good stuff. Okay, and now you have your card slot onto your center panel. I'm going to go ahead and grab my wing divider, mark out about 1/8 of an inch, and then mark stitching lines on, you don't have to do the bottom and the top, but it's here, I might as well do it. So I'm just going to do, because right now we're just going to be doing the two sides. All right, find my stitching chisels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the top here. I'm going to overhang the last prong on the edge there, and then just walk it down with hand pressure. You don't have to go all the way to the corner if you don't want to. I'm not. I'm going to stop somewhere close to the bottom. Somewhere like that. Same thing on the other side. Okay. A little granite slab here. And then you're just going to punch your holes through. Get this on camera better. Okay, so I punched all my holes there, and again, do not punch the bottom, do not punch the top yet, that'll be later. So just your two sides. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch these up, these two sides up off camera. I have a saddle stitching video if you need help saddle stitching. I did it a couple years ago, it's in my feed. Otherwise, I'm just going to go do that now, and then we'll come back and look at our result. All right. So I went ahead and stitched both sides of that card slot there. And next step will be to bevel and burnish the edges here. So first I'm just gonna rough this up with the sandpaper a little bit. And then find my edge bevel there. Again, just the sides here, don't do the bottom. Grab a little bit of gum trag. Okay, that's good enough for our purposes here. We just went ahead and burnished both sides of the card, center card panel, because once we put it together, you won't be able to access it. All right, so move that stuff out of the way, and now you want to grab your inside panel here. So as you can see, I have some markings for how the panel lines up. You want to put it, directly in the center there. So if you want to use, I'm going to use the PDF actually, the paper printout, and kind of just line it up here. Oops. And then I'm going to grab my scratch awl and just put little marks right where this should align on the leather. Just right on the edge of the leather, because then, once we put it together, you won't even be able to see those marks, because the card panel will be over top of them. So top and bottom. Okay. And then you're going to go ahead and just, eye it up, make sure everything looks nice and even on both sides. And go ahead and grab your glue. And now we're going to be gluing the top edge and the bottom edge. Okay. All right, and then carefully place your panel where it needs to be. Okay, so I'm going to let that sit for a minute, and then we're going to come back and mark our stitching holes. All right, so now we are just going to be stitching the top, not the bottom. The bottom will be at the end. So just stitch the top. So go ahead and mark your stitching line, and go ahead and grab your irons or whatever you're using and mark your holes. Okay. All right, you know the drill by now. Got our top layer of holes marked. Go ahead and stitch that up, and then we will come back and move on. Okay, went ahead and stitched the top there. So same as before, now we are just going to sand the top. Get it nice and straight there, and then bevel and burnish. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually just going to burnish this whole top section here. And that will be good enough for our purposes. Okay, so now it is time to put the card slots on. So you can start with either side you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a card slot and a T-slot, and then I'm going to put the card slot just with no glue, just put it down, and try to get this on the camera better here. And just line it up where it's supposed to be, right edge to edge, the back, the front, and the sides. Okay, and then from there, I'm going to just hold it down and then put my T-slot in, and then make sure it's nice and a nice snug fit, just like that. Make sure it's nice and even on both sides. Okay, that looks good. Okay, and then from here what I'm going to do is then I'm just going to hold the T-slot down and remove the card slot, and then that's where I'm going to mark the back of where the T-slot is there. So let me find my scratch awl. So right here, I'm just going to kind of lightly trace the outline of where the T-slot will be sitting. Just like that, okay? Because now I know where to put the glue and glue it down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Find another piece of leather here. Here we go. Again, you're just putting a little glue on the bottom parts, not anywhere else yet. You can put glue here if you're ready. Okay, so now at the same time when I'm putting this down, before it really gets attached, I want to, move this around, make sure everything's nice and straight, and then, put my card slot back and make sure it aligns nicely before I stitch it down. Okay, so that's basically right where I want my card slot to be. So now I'll move the T-slot down a little bit. And that looks pretty good. Nice and snug, no gaps. Okay. All right, looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and mark my stitching line. You can stitch across the whole bottom if you want. You really don't have to though, you just got to put a couple stitches in there. So I'll just kind of center, what I like to do is I'll just center my iron. Like that, and then punch through. All right, and you know the deal. Go ahead and stitch that, and then we'll come back. All right, stitch the bottom of the T-slot down. Now you can glue, you want to put a layer of glue all the way around the bottom here and glue the T-slot down, and then we will put the card slot down as well. Okay, go ahead and glue your T-slot down, the rest of it, and then also your card slot. Once you're happy with the position, you know, let it sit and attach there. Okay, so I'm going to wait a minute and then we're going to go and put the top line of stitching down on this card slot section. Okay, so I'll let that sit for a minute. Now I'm going to grab some sandpaper and just clean up this top edge, make it nice and even. Okay, so now this part is a little bit tricky when you think about it. So as you can see, the holes go all the way around a card slot of the card slot section on the inside. However, on the outside, there's only holes from the left, from the side and to the bottom. So what we have to do is stitch across the top section and down a little bit, right around to right where it starts the straight section of the left side. So around the curve into the straight section, and then stop. So then when we sew the outside on, we can continue from there. It'll make more sense in a second here, if you've never done this before. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to draw, my stitching groove on the top here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the curve right about to there, right where it looks like it's starting the downward section. And that's pretty good. So that's what we're going to be stitching right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my 2-prong, and I'm just going to start from that point there, and I'm just going to walk around the edge. And then grab my 6-prong and finish the job right to there. Okay, put this on camera better here. So we have it across the top and then right around the corner to where it starts to go straight down. And we're going to punch those. Okay, and you can see that there. All right, so again, there's a lot of short stitching sections in this project, so I'm going to go ahead and stitch that, and then we will come back. All right, went ahead and made that stitching line there. All right, so that will be also how we do the other side before we set up and attach to the outside panel. Okay, so you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. I'm going to do it off camera just to save time, but literally the same thing. Do your T-slot, stitch your T-slot down, glue your card slot down, and then stitch on that top section around the corner right to where it starts to go down. Okay? And then we will come back and then we will attach our outside panel. Okay, so I went ahead and stitched the top of the other side after, gluing down the card slots like we did the first time. And you can see what we have here. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and burnish the top edge of this card slot. So go ahead and do your bevel. All right, now our top sides are all burnished now, and it is time to put on the top, or the outside, sorry. So this is the trickiest part of the whole project. And first, we're going to have to burnish the top edge. It's the same design on both sides, so you can just choose a side. All right, good enough. Okay, so for this part, you really have to make sure you line everything up good when you're doing this. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be connecting, we're going to be gluing to the bottom here to the middle. So we're going to be starting in the middle of this project. not on the outside. So with a normal bifold, you start on one side, and then you do the other side, and then you're done. This, you have to start in the middle to get this bottom part. Don't do anything to the top, just to the bottom here. All right, and then once we glue that down, we're gonna punch it from the back, stitch this through, and then our middle will be done, and then we'll fold and then we'll do each side, okay? So I find it's pretty good to, whatever template you're using, to go ahead and grab that. Grab whatever your outside template was. And I'm actually going to use the holes for this. So I'm going to put my template down on top of my shell. And then I'm just going to use these two outside holes just to give me an idea of where this is going to line up. Okay. And then if you want to use a ruler to make sure you have an even amount on both sides, it should be about, I think it's 1/4 of an inch. Yeah. Let me make sure. Okay, so it's about 3/8 of an inch that you want on both sides. So you want to just kind of lay that down. You know, definitely take your time with this step. You don't have to rush. Make sure it's nice and even. Okay, that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is grab a clip and then just make sure it stays where it's at on the top there. Okay. So now you're going to glue the bottoms. Ooh, I wish I didn't do that. Well, I'm dumb and I only clipped the inside. Okay, so I gotta redo that because I'm an idiot. So let's see, put it back in line. Looks pretty good, looks pretty good. All right, make sure you clip both pieces. All right, now we should be all right. And I'm gonna go ahead and get some glue. And then line it up and give it a good squeeze. And you can probably move your clips down to the bottom. Okay. So now just our bottom is getting glued down. I'm gonna let that dry for a minute, go grab something to eat, and then we'll come back and stitch this down. All right, so I let that dry for a couple minutes. And I'm just gonna find my sandpaper. Do a quick little sanding in that. Okay. So you can mark your line on the front here, stitch and groove. And now you also have to mark one on the back. So just kind of eyeball where it is. And that is our groove on the back. So since we are going to be punching from outside in everywhere, you got to do it on this side too. So if you want, you can mark from the corner and punch all the way through as a starting point. I'm just going to eyeball it, I think. I usually just take my chisel here and just kind of guess. Or you could even do this. Take your template, put it over top. This should line up pretty close if you did good job cutting. Yeah, it looks pretty good, so I'll use this. And then just mark through. And those are your two outer holes. Okay, and then once you have the holes that you are wanting to punch, go ahead and punch through. You got 3 layers here now, so you want to be more careful. Okay, so I have my holes across the bottom there, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch them up. All right, went ahead and stitched the bottom there. So now our middle part is connected, and now you are just going to do the outside sides like you would do a regular bifold. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some glue. Getting dark here, I'm trying not to block my light source. Don't forget when you're gluing up the side here, you're only going up to where that last stitch is there. You don't want to glue all the way around. All right, so now you want to fold it. You want to make sure, since the outside is longer, you kind of got to fold them both in, and then start along the outside edge, make sure it's nice and even, and then work yourself down the bottom here. So this part's a little bit of a pain in the butt, but once you get it clipped down, so I'm clipping at the most stress points, which are up here and down here especially. It really wants to pull away from the body there. So, you know, make sure it's nice and straight. You can always clean up your edges later, but the more even you do it now, the less work you have to do later. Okay, so that is going to dry for a minute. We'll come back and we will mark our stitching. So that has been gluing for a couple of minutes now. Now I'm going to just gently take off these clips, make sure it doesn't separate, and just give it a good sanding. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to draw or trace a stitching line on the inside here. And then of course, one on the outside. Just remember, you're only going up to that last stitch there. So a good thing to do is take your scratch awl and then poke a hole through that hole to the outside, just like that. And now you know where your stitching line will start. Okay. So we are going to be marking from that hole on the outside all the way to the end. think that's pretty good. Okay, so when you're punching this, don't punch through the first one because you might cut the thread. We'll gently open that hole up at the end. So I'm gonna skip over that first hole that we marked and start at the second. And then we're gonna punch through. Okay, and like I mentioned for this last hole here, I'm kind of just going to take my single prong prick, or actually I'll just use this scratch awl and just kind of poke that through, just like that. We just need enough space to start the stitch. Okay. I am going to go ahead and stitch this up, and we'll come back. Okay, I went ahead and stitched that up. Let's see if I can get this on the camera. It's the outside. All right, and as you can see, we started, here's the top, and then goes all the way around. And then we have one side completed. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, just glue it up, mark my stitches, and punch through and stitch. And then we will come back and finish up all the edges, and we'll be done. All right, we're all stitched up. And in case you were just wondering why we have to do the center like that, because now it allows the two edges here to have enough space to, the two wings of the wallet to close and have enough space to wrap around themselves and catch that will be in this trifold. Okay, so now the only thing left to do is to burnish. So I'm going to move this out of the way. And this too. So now I'm going to take my edger and edge this wallet. Not paying attention to what side I'm on here. Okay, so now it is burnishing time. Actually, I'm going to do a little sanding first. I charged my Dremel up to sand these edges to even them out, but I did a pretty good job all around, so I didn't have to do too much. But it's always good, you can get the extra glue off of the edges with sanding. All right, now we're good to go. Definitely don't forget the middle. All right, that's good enough as far as burnishing goes. I mean, obviously you can keep refining your edges down and make it nice and smooth. And that will finish up our project here. Kind of start giving it the creases. You can see what I mean though. A softer leather might stay closed earlier than this one will, because it's going to take a little bit of time sitting on it and stuff for this type of leather to stay closed by itself. And let me grab some, here's some cash. I mean, this is a giant cash area, so especially if even if you're using like non-US banknotes that are bigger, I mean, you have plenty of space in here to put cash. And then some cards. Here's another one I made. I put a different, so I put a 3 to 4 ounce buck brown harness leather shell on this one. Looks pretty cool. Two-tone. Cool. So that will conclude the build along tutorial for this trifold wallet. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, and thanks for watching.